Good morning. My name is Rolando Daniel. I'm the CEO at the Collaborative for Teaching and Learning, and I have the honor of being your facilitator for the Rigor is Not a Four-Letter Word workshop. I think it's going to be an interesting 4 sessions, and I look forward to working with each one of you to explore this idea of what rigor is and doing it from a systemic approach. So how do we really support the development of rigor in our schools and districts, not just take a scattershot approach to different aspects of rigor. I don't believe rigor is an accident, and I don't believe it's something that just excellent teachers can bring to their classroom, but I do think it is something that takes a lot of intentionality. I think that's what we'll find as we work together. The site that we're using to organize our workshop is this Google site. I'll send you the link in the email. And it's got a homepage, and you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner as each session is going on, they'll become live. So session 1 has been completed. This video is a little bit of an overview for those of you who weren't able to join us during that first session, to give you a sense of the processes we'll be using during the workshop, as well as a little bit of the content. This site will have all of the resources we're using and sharing. So our first question for Rigor 1 is, what is rigor? Really begin to understand, what do we already know about rigor and what do we want to learn as a result of this workshop? One of the tools we'll be using is a simple little Padlet where you can go in and add your thinking. Notice that as people were adding, we asked them to add their name so that we knew who was saying what, so it would prompt some conversation. I also encourage you to go in and add some thinking to other people and help extend some of their ideas, as well as challenge some ideas as we move forward. We're only going to be able to explore rigor as intensely as we can if we're willing to share and probe each other's work. At the Collaborative for Teaching and Learning, we use the norms for collaboration. They're not original to us. The Thinking Collaboratives work, but we believe that idea of probing is a way of really getting at better ideas, and we encourage you to use that here. The other thing we always use is presuming positive intent, and that is not that we're challenging you because we're trying to put you on the spot, but that we're really trying to increase the work for all. So our first 4 columns in our Padlet that we want to explore and get and access that prior knowledge is, what does rigor look like in your school currently? And what are some ideas about that? How do you increase rigor? How do you support all students in being effective in rigorous learning experiences? And then lastly, what do you want to know as a result of this work? That helps us make sure that we're meeting your needs as they come across. We're coming from a wide variety of settings, and I think that adds value to the conversation as we move forward. So part of this initial session was getting to learn a little bit about the participants. So we used the idea that if CTL were on River Road and we were doing this together, we would all potentially be in that spot. But since we're all coming from a variety of different locations, tell us about how far you are away from CTL. CTL, the Collaborative for Teaching and Learning, has been around for 25 years. We began as a response to the ungraded primary component of KIRA, and have morphed along the way into really a strong professional learning organization with multiple of our own programs and models. Most specifically currently in the state and in the region, where our adolescent literacy and artful reading models are in about 45 schools across the state and an additional 10 or 15 schools across the region. We are pleased with those growths, and we have a couple of new models. Our post-secondary skills model is actually being tested in a couple of districts right now, and our procedural fluency model is about to start testing in a couple of different districts. So we're excited about that work, and we hope to bring our thinking to this work and other work as well. Our 4 main tools for the work that we'll be doing are these 3 articles. Cheryl Gray's Getting Rigor Right, and the subtitle there is Academic Challenge Without the Backlash of Failure. David Page, Grant Smith, and John Sizemore's article, Conceptualizing Rigor and Its Implications for Education. This article was written around the Common Core, but I don't think the Common Core are the it here. It's the application of these things that really is important. So as you're reading it, substitute whatever academic standard you have that you're responsible for. So if you're a Kentucky administrator, there's the Kentucky Academic Standards, and they fit in very nicely with the same conversation. If it's other set of standards, please feel free to think through that lens. But I think their approach to rigor is very strong from a systemic approach, that we can impact this, and what does it look like, and how do we help teachers and our schools achieve that level. And then Barbara Blackburn's Rigor and Assessment in the Classroom, that idea of assessment being more than just a summative piece, but a well-rounded approach to assessment, also ties back into Cheryl Gray's Getting Rigor Right and different characteristics of that. The title of this workshop, Rigor is not a four-letter word, is actually from Barbara Blackburn's book. I think her definition of rigor is one of the best that I've read, and it's simple but not overly simplistic. And then CTL's Rigor rubric, which is actually based off of Cheryl Gray's initial framework, will be something that we use to reflect on our own practice in our school and in our district, and then create a plan for how do we begin to increase rigor systemically in our school and achieve some of the goals. One of the things that we'll really embrace as part of this work is that rigor is not an accident. And rather than taking a scattershot approach at how we approach rigor, do it very systemically so that we're achieving a bigger view of rigor for our students as we move forward. I think that's one of the pieces that is really strong. To get started, I want you to think about this minute and 15-second, minute and 12-second clip from Carol Dweck and her idea of growth mindset and its implications for rigor. I think it's a nice way of getting the conversation started. The assignment for this week is really three pieces, and that is reading the first two articles, and they're linked here. That's Cheryl Gray's work and John and David Page's work, and then doing some reflecting through a double entry organizer. We use the double entry organizer as a way of interacting with text, because it gives us a nice structure for what does the text tell me and talk about, and then what do I add to that, or how does it connect to me. When you're using this, please, you can write in this if you want to, but I prefer that you go up here, File, and make a copy, and use that copy for your text. Again, just click on File, make a copy, and it'll create a copy somewhere for you to access through Google Docs. If you're not a Google user, then let me know and we can work something out, but that should work for most of us. If you're not comfortable with Google Docs or the Google Drive platform, this will still work. You can do it this way, but if you type in this one document, everybody will be able to see it. The next piece of that is, after you've finished those articles and you've done some of the processing of content, go back to that Padlet, and this will open that Padlet up, and there's a fifth column over here now that I would like you to start adding your reflections to. And this is really this idea of what are the implications for me as an administrator given the content of the two readings. Not worried about other people at this point in time. I really want to focus this initial energy into what does this mean for me? What can I do? Not what can others do, but what can I do to help them achieve that goal? And then we'll begin to think about more intentional approaches to achieving that. The last piece is I put together a short playlist of videos, and we can add more videos to this. This is not an exhaustive list by any stretch of the imagination, but it does begin to explore some of the characteristics of rigor. And it's also one of those pieces where it's a very complex idea. And again, we don't want to think about just taking snapshots or scattershot approach to rigor, but doing it systemically. But it is good to see some of the different resources out there, and how do these resources compare to what we're reading about rigor? And what are they getting at? What characteristics, what components of characteristics are they getting at? And then how do we build off of that? So I think it'll be a good set of resources that get you thinking about rigor. And then as we come back together on Monday at 11 o'clock on Monday the 19th, then we will be able, Tuesday the 19th, we'll be able to talk about what we've learned. and share some of our thinking as we begin to think about next steps. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Again, my name is Roland O'Daniel. My email is that you have, and my access to me through my cell phone or my office phone, although I'm not in the office these days. Please feel free to call the cell phone if you have any questions that you can't work out. We're happy to do that. So I'm looking forward to the work. I think it'll be a really interesting set of experiences as we work together. My goal is not to pontificate too much, but to really kind of explore this as a group.